Tonight, our investigation into sex trafficking takes us to Cambodia. That's where a now retired BC RCMP officer has spent decades helping victims fleeing what he calls modern-day slavery. Brian McConaughey's mission of hope was triggered while working to put two notorious BC pedophiles in prison for preying on children in Southeast Asia. CTV's Michelle Bernoro has the latest in our series, Hidden in Plain Sight.
In the bustling Cambodian capital, Phnom Penh, filled with street markets and tuk-tuks, and where gaps between poverty and wealth stand in sharp contrast, a side road brings you to a building with a very Canadian connection.
This is an environment that is safe for them.
This is Ratanak International, founded by Delta's Brian McConaughey.
Sign in here for security.
It's a refuge for traumatized women and teens who've just escaped a life of sex slavery.
They escape by jumping from moving cars, pretending to be ill, so they're taken to hospital. We've had one swim through the sewers of, I think it was Beijing. How bad does it have to be before you'll climb down into sewers with no expectation of even surviving?
McConaughey's humanitarian work in Cambodia began decades ago. While with the RCMP, he helped jail a sex predator from Vancouver.
Donald Baker was the first file of a Canadian coming to abuse children in Cambodia.
Later, police discovered another BC man abusing children in Cambodia, Christopher Neal.
He would post his pictures of abuse and swirl his face so he couldn't be identified. It wasn't hard to unswirl him, and he was tracked and identified.
Though retired, McConaughey assisted Mounties in finding the building where Neal's crimes were committed. However, getting search warrants was tricky, so McConaughey bought the building instead.
Now that I owned the crime scene, I didn't need warrants to examine the building, and so it was ours. And so we actually processed the whole crime scene, went to court, led to conviction.
But McConaughey knew much more work had to be done to help victims of exploitation.
Innocent young country girls. They're swept up by this. The traffickers masquerading as job skills brokerage companies will get them passports, we'll get them their airline tickets, we'll ship them off. But in accepting the airline ticket and the visas and the passport, they don't realize they're becoming indebted.
He says they are most often sent to China. His organization has worked with the Cambodian government to create protocols for the return of undocumented Cambodians.
We had another girl who was imprisoned in an apartment for years to be sexually abused, and she exited that apartment through an 8-story window and survived by ripping up curtains and making herself a rope.
Some of the trafficking victims have been out of Cambodia for years. Ratanak not only gives them trauma counseling and skills training, but also gives them hope. This woman, who we are not identifying, is one of hundreds of survivors Ratanak has helped. With a support worker as her translator, she told CTV her impoverished family forced her to go to China and marry a man she had never met.
Husband that has used violence with her.
She says the trafficker took her passport and ID, and she had no way out.
She feels a lot of anxiety and has depression and worries a lot, just thinking about she has no document, so police can catch her anytime.
After being trapped for years, she escaped, only to be jailed until the Cambodian embassy intervened and she was returned home. In addition to counseling, Ratanak sponsored training so she could become a tailor. It's a job she loves, and it's given her a new life. Ratanak now employs about 80 people at its center in Phnom Penh, supported by Canadian donors. And at the heart of it all is McConaughey.
It's exhausting, but after 35 years, when I see lives given freedom, it just keeps me going.
And keeps him focused on his mission of hope for those robbed of so much. Michelle Bernoro, CTV News in Phnom Penh, Cambodia.
This project was made possible with funding provided by the Lieutenant Governor's BC Journalism Fellowship in partnership with Government House Foundation and the Jack Webster Foundation. Tomorrow, Michelle continues her reporting from Cambodia. She'll have a closer look at the work Ratanak International is doing, including helping sex trafficking victims rescued from China. That story tomorrow at 6.